Welcome to our daily reflection for this Monday, September 9th. And today in the gospel, we have Jesus healing a man with a withered hand. And of course, it's the Sabbath. And the Pharisees have added to a rigorous interpretation of the Torah that there couldn't be healings done on the Sabbath. Now, the law of Moses doesn't say that you cannot heal on the Sabbath. It just says you cannot work on the Sabbath. And it's interesting, Jesus sees this man with a withered hand, and then he knows he's being spied on by the Pharisees and scribes. And they're looking to catch him in a mistake, in an error. And so they're not open, but they're kind of investigating Jesus with a hermeneutic of suspicion. And Jesus knows that, and he sees the man with the withered hand, and then maybe the man with the withered hand looks at Jesus empathetically, hoping that he would be cured. And Jesus initiates. He tells the man with the withered hand, come and stand in the middle of the synagogue. And the seating in a synagogue is all around the walls. So the whoever was going to preside at the synagogue service and read and teach on the Torah would be in the exact middle of the room. And so Jesus tells the man with the withered hand to come and stand in the middle where everybody could see him. Jesus isn't going to act in the shadows. He's not going to secretly heal this man to avoid the gaze and the attention and the scrutiny of the scribes and the Pharisees. What he does in the open, and he's bold. And then Jesus asks a question. Before he cures this man, he asks a question to the scribes and the Pharisees. He says, I ask you, is it lawful to do good or evil on the Sabbath? To heal, save life, or to take it away, to destroy life? Now, in doing this, Jesus is going back to an important precedent set in Jewish tradition, and that is in the time of the Maccabees. In the time of the Maccabees, when the Gentiles were fighting against the Jews, many Jews felt that according to the Torah Sabbath legislation, that you shall not work on the Sabbath, that you couldn't fight and resist militarily on the Sabbath, because that would be a work. And so a lot of Jews started getting slaughtered on the Sabbath. And of course, you can imagine the Gentiles. There's one day a week they're going to fight the Jews, and that's the Sabbath. So Judas, Maccabees, and the Maccabees and the Jews gather together and say, like, if we don't fight on the Sabbath, we're going to be wiped out. So what should we do? Well, in order to preserve life, we have to be willing to fight on the Sabbath. But we're fighting in order to save life, and so it's lawful to fight on the Sabbath. And they decree that, and that becomes a Jewish custom even to this day. In fact, in modern Judaism, and after the state of Israel was created, there was a big debate before the Yom Kippur War and the Six-Day War amongst the Jews. Like, well, can you only do defensive warfare on the Sabbath? Can you do offensive? And then they decided that the best defense is a good offense, and you're doing the offense in order for defense to save life, so they allowed it. And the point is this. Jesus is saying, if you can think that it's lawful to fight and kill in order to preserve life on the Sabbath, how much more is it lawful to heal and to preserve life on the Sabbath? So Jesus is showing that reason leads you to the right interpretation of the Torah. And that leads to what he's doing is healing, and it's legitimate. Now, ironically, after Jesus tells the man to stretch out his hand and heals him, they were enraged, angered at this act of healing, which is just a terrible thing. And then they went out and plotted with each other on what they might do to Jesus. They conspired, literally, in the Greek, which conspiring and meeting is a work. So ironically, Jesus does something that is not technically a work, healing, but they, in response, go and do a work. They have a meeting, and they plot out in a conference meeting what they're going to do with Jesus, and they plot how they're going to kill him and destroy him. And so they do evil, Jesus does good. And so, as we think about this, we think about how do we interpret the law of the Lord? And always what leads to life is what is right. What takes away from life is what's wrong. And Jesus gives us an important principle for interpreting the scriptures. Charity and life are the guiding lights to interpret the Word of God correctly. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.